I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're delighted to introduce you to a very talented author. His name is Michael Codner, and he has written a powerful book. It is called George and the Briton. It is a gripping historical novel set in the tumultuous times of the Roman Empire. The story unfolds through the eyes of Mark, a young British sailor who finds himself chronicling the extraordinary deeds of George, a Roman army officer and his special forces unit, amidst the political and religious upheavals of Emperor Diocletian's reign. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank our team at Prime 7 Media for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support writers like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his wonderful book. The links are below this interview. Michael, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
Very good to be here. Thank you.
Oh, it's great to have you on the show. Your novel, George and the Briton, transports readers to a pivotal time in history. What inspired you to write about this specific period, and how did you approach the research required to bring this era to life?
Well, as you say, it is a very interesting period of history, which is actually not well known by a lot of people, except for very specific scholars. I spent quite a lot of time in my job in the Royal United Services Institute in my free time, I have to say, doing historical research on this. I didn't do any writing while I was still working on a daily basis. But I was particularly interested in this period initially because in 286 AD, the admiral of the Britannic fleet, who obviously the fleet worked for Rome, Carausius, seized power, declared himself Emperor of Britain and Northern Gaul. And I don't think hardly any English people know about this story, but eventually he was assassinated by his treasurer, and then the treasurer was overthrown by Constantius. So that really was the beginning. And I thought I would like to expand the story. And I was also very interested in the story of George, of which there is a lot of legend, but very little or no history at all, really. I should mention that when he was actually canonized by Pope Gelasius in 494 AD, the Pope actually said, "He's one of those whose names are justly revered among men, but whose acts are known only to God." Wow. So that gives one quite a lot of freedom. Also, of that period, there's not very much written history at the time. There are a couple of authors who wrote on the subject, but they had a very specific Christian view, so they probably hated the Emperor Diocletian.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
There's quite a lot of flexibility in what the story can actually be, but I did try and get as much accurate history as I possibly could into the story.
Exactly. And you balance the job of informing and entertaining very, very well. The character of Mark serves as a unique lens through which we experience these historical events. What led you to choose a young British sailor as your narrator, and how does his perspective shape the story?
Well, I wanted a British sailor because George is the patron saint of England, but there's absolutely no history that he might have ever come to England. So I thought if I had a young British sailor who could write because of his childhood, when his stepmother's father was actually the teacher to the children of the governor of York. That's where he learns how to write, and also learns some Greek and he knew Latin anyhow because he was a sailor. But also I was a sailor myself, and as a youngster, when I was a midshipman, I had to write a journal as part of my training in the Caribbean in a frigate called HMS Sirius. And I wanted the book to be written in very simple language so it would be understandable by quite a wide audience, not too much modern slang, but something very, so a young lad's account would be the sensible way of approaching this.
Exactly, exactly. Have you been kind of writing this novel in your head your whole life and then finally put it down on paper?
Probably I've been thinking about it and
Yeah.
doing, say, historical research for about, I say, about 14 or 15 years. But I only actually started writing the texts when I stopped working for the Royal United Service Institute full time. In my own private time. I wrote it pretty quickly because I had everything in mind before. And it's quite short. It's only 64,000 words, so not much bigger than a novella.
Is this the first book you've written?
It's the first novel I've written. I've written in my previous job and also in my latter days in the Navy. I wrote their first book of naval strategic doctrine for the United Kingdom. And I've written a lot of articles and things, but not a novel. And I also write doggerel as one of my hobbies.
Wonderful, wonderful. Your novel touches on the conflict between the Roman Empire and Christianity. Tell us how you went about addressing the complexity of religious and political tensions in your book.
Well, my character, George, I didn't want him to come across as sort of very extreme Christian character.
Yeah.
One of the legends is that actually his mother, who was from Palestine, was descended from Joseph of Arimathea. So his Christian side to him was very much a family thing, rather than that he had been sort of converted and was very extreme in any sense. So he is very open in this sense. And also in his unit that he commands, he has to have a wide range of different nationalities and things because he's like special forces and needs to go to all sorts of different places and wants to pull all the cultures together in his group. So I've got characters from all over the place, including a young lad from India.
Yeah, exactly.
I did want to talk about a lot of the Christian aspects, but very much Mark himself doesn't really know what his religion is because his father, who was the flag captain to Carausius in the Britannic fleet, worshipped Mithras, as a lot of military people did in those days. He didn't know what his mother's background was because she died when he was only 4. So he's looking at Christianity very much from the outside. Yeah. It's not till near the end when he, I shouldn't do too many spoilers, but he actually marries George's younger sister.
Gotcha.
But he has to start learning stuff.
Exactly. Exactly. He's got to catch up quickly at that point. George and the Briton is a tale told through a soldier's diary, of course. What challenges did you face in writing from this perspective, and what do you hope readers will get from this intimate storytelling style?
Well, because there were so many very complicated issues at the time, like how the Emperor Diocletian set up his tetrarchy of 4 senior people, 2 emperors and 2 Caesars, and divided the Roman Empire into 4 parts so that it could be much better commanded by 4 people who actually understood the areas in which they were. All of this and all the religious issues, all the political issues, all the legal stuff at the time, it was quite to me an idea that to have the young lad just asking questions all the time, saying, what on earth does this mean? He was part of the formation that George commanded was a vexillation. Now, what's a vexillation? What the hell's a vexillation? Well, it was a unit that worked directly for the emperor, not as part of a legion in one of the regions, and it was deployed all over the place. And that's what a vexillation was. but also he had to ask the question, what's a tetrarchy, and all of these things. So I thought that's a good way of perhaps explaining the history to a young or another reader who wasn't particularly knowledgeable about history of the period.
Exactly. Well, you did a masterful job in crafting this book, that is for sure. Michael Codner is the author of George and the Briton. It is a gripping historical novel set in the tumultuous times of the Roman Empire. It's a chapter of history you probably know little about. He has told it through fictional characters, but it is enlightening, and you will just love the story. It is absolutely gripping. Michael, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you very much, Logan, for having me. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Great speaking with you. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.